This project is an honest and in-depth perspective of and from former students of Milt and Hershey School. We call ourselves Milts.
An organic, open discussion of life before, during, and after attending MHS.
All right, y'all ready?
Yeah.
All right, let's get it started. Hey, everybody, welcome back to Milk Talk Podcast. Thanks for joining us again. This is a show where we talk to former Milts and students, teachers, alumni, administrators, various people who went to or worked at Milt and Hershey School over the years, and we get a chance to sit down and have conversations with them about their experiences and how it affected them. And today we got Robin Henderson Williams. Is that right?
Yeah.
All right.
Yes,
What's up, Robin?
Hi.
Williams.
Hello. Yeah, Robin Williams.
There you go.
Nice.
So let's start off. Can you tell everybody what class you graduated in?
Yes, class of 2003.
2003. Okay, I thought it was 2004 for some reason.
No, that's 17 years ago. Yeah.
When did you go to the school? When was your start date? What grade?
August. I sometimes mix it up because you got Morgan. When did Morgan graduate? 90.
So Morgan was in Warner, Jessica, and my class.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I went that August, I believe, of his graduation. So August 1990
Okay.
in
Got
first
it.
grade.
First
Yeah.
grade.
Oh, first grade.
Mhm.
Wow.
Wow. So you
Mhm.
did the junior division. You're old school.
Yep.
You're an OG.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep. Hancock. Student home Hancock.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. What student home you were in, and who were the house parents at that time?
Actually, the Mulderigs. So
Okay.
Michael Mulderig.
Okay.
So he just retired from the school because he and his wife were house parents when I started, and then I do believe that Mrs. Mulderick fell ill, and they stopped being house parents. And then she did pass away, but then he later came back to continue working at the school. And he's been there. I mean, every homecoming I go back, I have pictures just like that picture I posted with Mr. Whitman. I have pictures with Mr. Mulderick. And I actually meant to, I'll send it to you. I have a photo of me walking up the stairs to Hancock with my box of belongings, and Mr. Mulderick's there. It's my first day walking up the stairs.
Oh, we need that.
So,
Oh, I
yeah,
think
I'll send that.
I saw that picture.
Oh, I might have posted it because when you started
Yeah.
I
I
have
do
some
saw that.
gems. I have an album. I have a couple gems like inside Old Memorial Hall, like in a classroom. I had Miss Schwartzbach, so I had yeah.
That's a long time to be there. You know, some people came in 8th grade or 9th grade, or anybody who came in junior division. I got a lot of respect for, because that's again, as we're getting through these conversations, people realize how heavy or how I don't know, what's the word I'm looking for?
That adjustment is different. Like you've already kind of become a little person. So the things you've experienced have kind of made you and even if you're only 13, you kind of think you have this view of the world from your experiences, and you kind of have built up like, okay, so here's how people move. And then you go to the Milt and it's completely different, right? Like they want you to trust them. They're like, trust us, and this is for your own good. And these chores are going to be great for you in the long run. Like it's totally different.
These chores are fantastic. It's like being in Jumanji. You like fall into a game. You're like, wait a second, what's going on?
Right.
But here's the funny part about us junior division. You go in junior division and you learn all the game. So you learn the rules. Next thing you know, you're in intermediate division. So like, oh snap, I gotta throw all those old rules I learned out, because now I got a new set of rules.
Yeah. So
it's another adjustment. So now you go through intermediate division, you're like, I'm cool, I got it made, I'm running the show. Oh, senior division. None of that stuff works from place to place. So it's like you're constantly learning how to adjust. I feel like, did you feel like that helped you at all, like in life, like because of those different adjustments you were able to make?
Actually, my classmates and I kind of coined this term a couple of years ago. Talking to them, I don't know, there were a couple of people who went through some things. I've gone through a divorce in my life. I've moved in my life. And we started to say like, yo, we're adjustable as fuck. Like we can just like, our adjustment level, like you take us from hot to cold and we're like, okay, we know how to change. Like we know how to adjust to this. And you can just really see that, like, you know, my classmates and I, like there's been losses in our class and we just like, just keep moving. You know, we're just like, we just know how to adjust and to take care of ourselves. You know, I've been through some struggles in my life where I look to like the average folk. I live in an area that's like kind of like, I feel like I'm in a bubble sometimes because where I live in upstate New York, people grew up here. They maybe have left, but they've come back, but I feel like they really haven't experienced the world sometimes. Like, and I don't mean to, like, I'm not trying to talk ill of them because a lot of them are my friends now, but when I talk to them and if they've got different political views, I'm like, you know, we experienced so much and I got to see so much the way people can live and go through stuff and the struggles people have. And you know, you're like, I want to look out for everybody around me. Like we're only as strong as our weakest link. Like I want to take care of people and that's how, you know, as a society, we're going to do well. But when you look at like how adjustable you have to be, I've seen myself go through things and I'm like, wow, like I feel like the average mom I know would have like quit. Like they would have just been like, all right, I don't know how to do this or I don't know where to go from here. But I feel like Milt and Hershey, we kind of just had this like problem solving ingrained in us. Like everything was just like, figure it out. Okay, here's what's changing. The amount of times, like even as a kid, I was thinking about the other day when I was thinking about my house parents, the number of house parents I had that I just had to be like, okay, cool, you're taking care of me now. You know what you're doing. You're not going to burn the house down. You know, you're going to, you know, like, all right, cool. Like, you're going to do my laundry now? Okay. You know, like, it's not that they were doing our laundry, let's be honest, but, you know, they were taking care of us, you know, and so to just be able to go, okay, this is what's next. I have definitely tried to be that way as a mom. And I don't know if anybody, I've talked to other Milts about this too. Like, I have heard, you know, when I went through my divorce, you know, you have to rely on people around you. You got to rely on like who's going to help you with picking up the kids because I'm single mom working. I got to go get the kids. And I've just tried to transfer to my children, like, trust me, this is okay. You're in good hands. These people are going to take care of you. And I'm going to be here, you know, 15 minutes after school's over. But it's that same feeling I felt at Milt and Hershey where I trusted the school and they were like, okay, these people are stepping in now to be your sub for the weekend. And they were new. You were like, all right, I mean, Milt and Hershey hired them, so they must be good. So, all right. And, you know, that wasn't always the case, but that was definitely this feeling of like trust that I kind of had that I think I try to transfer on. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny that you talk about the adjustability because, you know, we in these times with the pandemic and everything, and then you see the crazies that are, you know, marching in front of the government and all that because they're inconvenienced. Milts, that's our life. We live in the inconvenient.
For real.
You know what I mean? Like anytime you turn around, we're inconvenienced. That's just the way we are. But we've learned to adjust in any circumstance. So I give you that for that because that's key. I doubt you'll see any Milts down there acting a fool at the government because we know, hey, so we got to stay in for a month or two. Cool. You know what I mean? I'll adjust.
We know how to do chores.
Yeah. Oh, you had plans? Oh, no, you don't. We're doing a house cleaning this weekend. You're not going to any sleepovers. You're not going to any movie nights. You're not going to the town. Like, no, we're doing a deep clean or whatever. Because, you know, it was just like everything just changed. It just changed. But yeah, and I think another thing that I have noticed within my fellow Milts, like, it doesn't matter the background we came to. It doesn't matter. Like, I have friends that when we get together, and my class is really, really good about getting together, like outside of reunions. Like, we all meet up for weekends. And we just actually were in the Poconos in February. But we get together and our conversations just are always so similar because of our experience that our beliefs and our values are consistent. And I think that that's one thing that when you look at folks who are freaking out right now, I'm just always like astounded by the inconsistency of their thoughts and what they're saying. So, you know, not to get too political, but they have this whole like my body, my right, or my body, my choice. And I'm like, but where do you stand on other issues? Like, that's where it's like, it is about the inconvenience that they feel that they can't look beyond their own circle to see like, oh, my inconvenience really means something more for somebody else. So I think it was again, like we were such a large group family that we were always being made aware of like, look at how everybody else is living. This is the way, you know, we want to be consistent with our values and be considerate of other people and just be, you know, aware of what's going on around us and adjustable, because it's kind of like for the greater good, you know, not to be like a cult, but for the greater good, you know.
What does so now, like now that you're older and you're out of school, and when you tell people like, oh yeah, I used to go to boarding school, like what is their reaction? Do you get the, oh, you went to boarding school? And I'm like, no, not that kind.
I always say it the same way, and it usually always gets like a laugh, but I always say I went to boarding school for poor kids. Like that's how I say it, because they always are like, what does that even mean? You know, and it just like kind of opens it up. But I feel like when you just say boarding school alone, they immediately have a vision. And then if I say boarding school for poor kids, they don't even have to reverse that vision at all. They just kind of think like, you know, like Tiny Tim at boarding school. Like, I don't know, like they just kind of go like boarding school for poor kids. But like I have the elevator speech down, like just so like, you know, I went to boarding school for poor kids. Like it was a school originally for orphan boys, started in 1909. I just go through the whole thing real quick. And you know, I always make a joke, like, you know, my class ring, it's the ring I've worn the longest out of all my rings. You know, it's just, I always have it on me. I have to say, like, I think of Milton Hershey every day at one point or another. It comes up in my life, or, you know, I have pictures all over my house. I have paintings from my old teachers. I'm friends with the teachers. You know, it's just such a part of who I am that like, it immediately comes out. It actually just recently got me a job back in August, because the guy, like I was in my interview process and I was talking about it, and I just brought up this school that I had attended. It had nothing to do with the job I was doing. I worked in insurance, and I was like, you know what, I went to this boarding school, and so it's always been, you know, in me to be adjustable and to just really want to pay it forward. And one of the guys called me later, and he's like, they were talking about you afterwards, and one of the guy like got teary-eyed thinking that you were like a poor kid in boarding school, and I was like, all right, like, okay, all right, yeah, feel bad for me. It was really hard.
Nailed it.
Yeah, so do I get a raise?
It worked.
Yeah,
Oh,
right. Yeah.
That's awesome. So wait, I wanted to ask you about your siblings. I know, like I said, Morgan was in our class, and I've hung out with Morgan, you know, after the Milt, and a couple times we went and supported Rich Crowd at a beatboxing competition in Manhattan one time or something. But tell us about your siblings and your relationship with them. And then,
yeah,
did they both go to the Milt?
They did. Yep. So my brother, actually, there's a little bit of a funny story, because I actually have two other brothers that I only learned about as an adult. So when I went out to Milton Hershey, I was on my own for about a year, and then Dale, my younger brother, came in pre-K. So he was there even longer. Yes. And by the way, there's people working on my roof, so I'm sorry if you can hear that. I don't know if you can.
Okay, you're
okay,
good.
because I can. Okay, because I got these on, but okay, yeah. But it's only one person. They've been social distancing, but anyway. So Dale came in pre-K, and back then it was co-ed, like living. So he came into Hancock with me. It was so annoying to like suddenly have my little brother there, you know, like he was just like that, like kind of wanted to follow me around. And like, you know, looking back, I feel bad because I was really annoyed by it. And then when they started to split us up, and I can't remember if it was like 4th grade or something, like I just know that he went to another student home just around the corner, and he got some strict house parents. And I was still sitting comfortable. Like I had cool house parents. Like they weren't that like perfect, but they definitely just ran like a pretty okay house with how things ran. It was fair. And like he went to the student home, and he just constantly got in trouble. So, and that pretty much is how it continued through school. Like I was like the golden child, and Dale just was like a troublemaker. And I remember actually confronting a teacher because he had said to Dale, why can't you be more like Robin? And I went to that teacher and I was like, listen, my little brother just told me that you said this to him. Like, don't say that to him. Like, he is a completely different person.
Right.
He's experienced things differently, because I left him at home with my mom for almost 2 years then. So how they were living at home, that's how he lived for 2 years, and I wasn't there for that. And we were always like really close in that sibling way that you fight all the time and want to kill each other, but you're also best friends, like that kind of way. Morgan, he was just so much older that I just remember seeing him at like holidays, like Christmas. I have a bunch of pictures of us at like Christmas and New Year's, and I don't even remember them really, because you know they're always like a blur as a kid, like everyone getting together. And then I remember at some point I got a little bit old enough where he could take me out for visiting, like out on the weekends, like weekend visiting. And he started to live in Lancaster for a while when he was going to like art school. And so I would go out and I felt like, oh, I'm with like my big brother who graduated from the Milt, and like that was really cool. And like we stayed close in that way where he was, and just like you said, like the music, like I'd go home and like he'd be like, yo, here's a CD, you should listen to this band. He gave me my first Beastie Boys CD,
Nice,
like
good
so
man.
stuff like that. Like so
That's
he was
stuff
always
you
kind of
need.
like, yeah. So, and I remember he gave me the Clash once, and I got back to my student home and they took it from me because it had a curse word in one of the songs. They confiscated my Clash CD. So yeah, so he was just kind of like my older brother, like that was like real artsy. I actually have a book that I made as a kid, and I gave it to him, and it was like my brother's girlfriend's name Jen, because he dated Jens all the time. And I wrote a book about it. It's like, this is Morgan's girlfriend named Jen who has a cat. This is Morgan's girlfriend named Jen with red hair. Like I wrote a book as a kid. So yeah, I don't know. Like I always looked up to my older brother, but then my little brother was just always getting in trouble. And, he went through a really hard patch, like at the end there. I think he only got half of his scholarship where like everyone was getting their regular scholarship. He got into college, he dropped out of college, he went through some issues with family, and then it just changed. Like and he'll even talk about it, like one day it just clicked of like how he needed to adjust his life, and now he's like a supervisor at Amazon, and he's buying a house and has 2 kids and is married, and I'm like, who are you? Like, who are you? Because there were times when I would tell him, like, when he was in his 20s, or young 20s, and I was just like, dude, I feel like one day you're gonna call me and I'm gonna need to come pick you up from like a homeless shelter, like, like that's how it felt. But he definitely just had like a different kind of, like, he had a different relationship with my mom, so he even went back and lived with her a little bit after. When I graduated, I was out, like I was 18 on my own, so we just had different experiences.
Where are you guys originally from?
New Jersey, Bergen County. So Bergen County. So right, you could see Manhattan from where we were. So we would take the New York City Trailways bus home. So we have a lot of great memories from that, because we were, taking that 3.5-hour Trailways bus ride home with that whole mix. I mean, it was like you had like 6-year-olds on there all the way up to like seniors in high school, just all mixed in.
So I got a question for you. Who was on that bus? Do you remember any of the faces or the people?
This is like, because the people that were older than me, like, I know like George Jacques, but like these are people who graduated just a couple years after or before me. George Jacques, John Montavon, these are some of my classmates.
Yeah. It's interesting just because I always like to know where people are from originally, because I try and figure out the region and because the Milt doesn't really or didn't advertise at the time. So it's really, you heard about the school word of mouth. So someone's parent
My
talked
grandma.
to someone's parent and,
Yeah, my grandma found out about it, and I think she just told my mom, like, you have to send your kids here. Like, she just was like, you got to send your kids here. Like, you can't do this on your own. And I do think my mom initially didn't want to, just based on how, like, she explains that she was just, like, told she had to. But I look back at it, and I'm just like, yeah, it was, like, the best thing ever that she could have done. Like,
well, first I want to ask, tell me about the summer program, because I don't think we had that when we was there.
Sure
It was called Chores.
No, we didn't.
It's called Barn.
Yeah, no, it's gotta be, so we were at Old Memorial Hall, and then we switched to the new Memorial Hall by 5th grade. So I don't remember what they had. I don't actually remember what they had, like, first, second, third, fourth. I don't know what I did for summer. I don't remember. But I know I did something, because I was either home or I was going on trips. But then in 5th grade, I just remember they started this thing called Summer of Opportunities. And you got like a booklet that was like a course booklet. And it had every week, there were options for camp. And there was a limit for each one. So you had to go through and fill that thing out. But the hardest part was that your parents had to sign off on it. So we knew what the courses were. We knew what the options were. Our parents got mailed this booklet, and it was like, fill this out with what your kids you want your kids to be doing. Because it was like they were giving them that option of like, we're not going to have your kids say, oh, I don't want to come home, mom. Like, I don't want to come home to you. But more like the mom is looking and going, wow, like they have this quilting workshop for week 7, August 3rd through the 5th. Like, yeah, I'm going to sign Robin up for that. So we knew what the options were. And we were able to call our parents and be like, okay, you got the booklet? Fill this out, fill this out, fill this out. And there were trips like down to North Carolina. Like there would be a bus of like, the max was like 30 kids. And there'd be 5 chaperones, and we would just take a bus down to North Carolina, and they just had it every day. Here's what we're doing. This day, it's going to be an arcade and beach day. This day, we're going to this museum. This day, I remember we went to like some seafood place. It was like all these Milts like at this seafood place. But it was such a crazy, it was like vacations for me that I had never experienced, We had a camping one. We went to Camp Milton for a whole week. I'm actually like just remembering these. I played sports all through school. So that was like a highlight for me for sure. But there was every sport. There was a soccer camp. So I always did the soccer camp. Sometimes there were 2. As I got older, talking like even freshman through senior, they started to have the actual camps where I went to Lock Haven for field hockey. I went to University of Maryland for field hockey. And I would go with 3 or 4 of my teammates from Milton Hershey. I went to one by myself, completely alone, just me as a Milt. I think it was Lock Haven that I went to alone. And I went there for the field hockey camp for a week. And you would make different friends there. And, you get to explain to Milton Hershey all over again, kind of explaining like, oh yeah, my mom didn't drop me off. She's not going to be picking me up. It's going to be a van. Like, trying to explain, that van had just picked up like 6 other kids who were out doing different things, So it was just, I really just appreciated like so many opportunities I had to just go do different things,
Now, the students that went, was it all grades and all ages for the summer program?
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure that they had it divided. So there might be like an elementary camp, but the limit, it was like K through 3rd grade. Okay. So you would have to flip through this book, and you're like, if I was in 6th grade, I was looking for all the 5 through 7, because it was like, really, you got this book and it was like almost like getting ready to go to college, except there was going to be a limit. They weren't going to be able to take. And I'm pretty sure, and I actually think the quilting class is the one I got into because there was no other room in any other group. So they had like overflow groups, right? They had like overflow groups where I don't think that any kid was like, no, sorry, you got to go home because there's no more camps for you. Like they had stuff for everybody. Like, right. I mean, it was just all types of stuff. Like I said, like it was SOP, Summer of Opportunities. Like it was.
It's interesting hearing about this.
Cool.
I'm sorry, I can't speak for my team, but it's interesting being older and hearing about this. I'm like proud that Milton Hershey got their stuff together and filled in some of these gaps and stuff that we didn't have. And then jealousy, because I mean, that sounds dope. Because when you were at the Milton, when we was there, if you didn't have parents or there was some crazy situation where you couldn't go home and you were staying at the Milt, it was called, you're gonna be doing a lot of chores and then maybe some recreation sprinkled in.
Nah,
that was about it.
I just remember the barn, bro. You're gonna stack some hay and straw. You're gonna stack a lot of hay.
I only did like 1 year of barn stuff, but I was elementary, and I have a little story with it. I'll have to send this to you too, because I have a photo of me bending over, picking up a calf, and I have one of the bottles because we were on like the calf feeding duty. And I got to tell you, I'm vegan. And it stems back to this memory when I had said to my house parents one night when we were having veal, and I was like, yo, what is veal? And we're in elementary, and like my house mom was just like, oh, it's baby cow. And I was like what? And I said, we just were feeding the baby cows. And she's like, oh, not them. And it was just this complete disassociation. Like we were eating those baby cows, but it was other baby cows. And it took me, at 12 years old, at Milton Hershey, I went vegetarian, and it was a lot of fun. Yeah. Cause I got to like the school was really good about it. I mean, basically my house parents were like, you're on your own. Like you need, you get $10 a week to buy veggie burgers, and they let me, they started getting them at the supply center. I ate so much peanut butter and jelly and tuna fish sandwiches because I hadn't given up fish yet. But I mean, I became this like advocate. Like I would set up a table at lunch, and they let me. Like I would set up the table at lunch, and I had vegan chicken nuggets, and people would come and try them out. And
nice.
Yeah, and I was like, go ahead. Yeah. So, and I continued. I mean, now I'm vegan, but I have this picture, and I remember having this moment of like, what's going on here? Like this is weird, and it stuck with me. That was that.
Well, just meeting you, I could tell that you're adventurous and you're a leader, because you don't seem to be one who follows. I mean, and you talked about sports. Can you tell us about the whole wrestling thing?
Oh yeah, yes. I think I mentioned this the other. I'm pretty sure I was the first female wrestler because I started in 6th grade, and I have some really sad, pathetic pictures of me looking like the most miserable woman on the planet, like in this singlet. I'm just like this string bean straight girl, like wearing this blue singlet, and I'm like standing in this gym, and I couldn't remember those guys' names. Hopper, these Hoppers, maybe it was the Hoppers. There were these two brothers, Steve and I forget his name, but they were coaches at the time, like wrestling coaches, and they were super supportive, like, let's go, Robin, let's go. You want to do this? Let's go. And I was like, all right. So it was hard because, I would practice with the guys, and like most of my guy friends were like okay with it, like, and they would help me and I would do okay. But then I would go to these, the wrestling meets and the matches, and I would just win by forfeit a lot, like guys just didn't want to wrestle me. And it was just kind of like, well, I talked to somebody and they were just like, well, it's like a lose-lose. Like that guy's going to wrestle you and win, and like big deal, he beat a girl, or you're going to beat him, and oh my God, he lost to a girl. And I remember this one meet we went to, I'm pretty sure it was like a tournament, and Mr. Alessi was my coach too. And that's part of why I got into wrestling, was he was my coach for everything. And then it was like, when you got to 6th grade to middle school, and then it was like, well, now you have field hockey. So I went from playing soccer, they put a stick in my hand, I was all about field hockey. Nice. I discovered softball. I love softball, but in the winter, I didn't really have a thing. I didn't really want to swim. I ended up swimming later, but because it was just purely for conditioning. But Mr. Alessi was the wrestling coach, and I was like, well, why don't I go do this? Like, it's good workout. I can stay with Mr. Alessi because he does all the coaching and stuff. And then, this seems like something I would like to be competitive. And I remember one meet where I went to, and I actually did pin the guy. But when I did my front headlock throw, we both landed, and I like smashed my face into the mat, and I stood up and my nose was bleeding. And I was like, oh man, like my nose is bleeding, but I won. And so they raised my hand, and the kid, he's like, put it here. And like my hand was covered in blood. And I remember I was like, no, like my hand's covered in blood. He's like, I don't care. So I shook his hand all bloody. And I just always remember that moment, because I was just like, okay, here
take
you go.
that with
like,
you.
But yeah, no. And then I think I did take a little break from it. I remember during that time I had braces, and I had to put the wax all over my teeth because I had the braces, because I would hit my mouth and it would like mess my mouth up. But yeah, then I continued wrestling into high school. And that's when there started to be some women, like some female competitions. And so there was one year, I only had to wrestle 2 people, but I did win Pennsylvania state championship. Nice. But it was like, I don't know, I have a hard time taking a lot of pride in it, because I know what the competition level was for the boys. So I felt like I didn't have to do the same amount of work to get that title. So even though it was like a title, and I do, like, I look back now and I do feel like a trailblazer. I mean, I think Heaven, the girl who just won her regional area, you look her up. If you just Google Heaven wrestler, her name's like Heaven, or it's amazing. And name. She just went through regionals or whatever and just won against boys and won. And I just like, it gives me chills thinking about it. And I made a comment, and I think I recently shared the picture of me wrestling, because I was like, wow, like when I started, this was like, what are you doing? Are you crazy? Like, why would you put yourself through this? So yeah, I did wrestle.
And so now you're rollerblading, right?
I roller derby. Yeah. I discovered.
Yeah, that's
rollerblading is
completely
not the same,
different.
bro.
My bad.
No.
Come on, man. Come on.
My bad.
Yeah, I
Tell us
play
about
roller derby. Yeah, I discovered it 2 years ago, actually. I didn't even know that it was a real thing still because, remember that movie came out a couple years ago, Whip It? And it was just like about that girl learning to play roller derby. And it was much different in the 80s and I think even early 90s it came back and it was like a show. It was like WWE, like they were characters and they were kind of, violent towards each other. And it's definitely a brutal physical sport, but there's so many rules and regulations and it's really monitored for safety. But it was just another challenge. Like I know how to roller skate and, somebody had said to me, like, if you wanted to ever play this, like you'd probably be good. And anytime I kind of get that, like somebody, I was like, oh really? Like this is something I could do. And I went to like a dance party and was hanging out with these women and we're dancing and the coach came over and I didn't know it was the coach. And she was like, you got to play roller derby. All these are the roller derby teams. And I looked around and they were just like petite women, like their size. And, I wrestled, I worked on a farm sanctuary. Like I'm pretty physical and strong. And so I looked around, I'm like, I could toss these people. Like what? Like these are the women that play. And we all have different roles, right? Like, so these women were petite in size for a reason. There's a thing called jamming. And so I just was inspired to pick it up and it was just something else to do. And, I always stayed competitive after Milton Hershey. Like I did not do anything in college. Like I stopped playing sports, even though everybody was like, oh, you got to play field hockey or you got to do this. And I got to college and it was just such a different environment. And there were just so many more opportunities for me to explore different interests and hobbies. And the college level is really strict. Like they wouldn't let you work. So Milton Hershey gave me that scholarship, but I had to have money for everything else. Like I didn't have money for anything and nobody was giving me money. So I had to get a job. And so if you wanted to play sports, you could only have certain hours on campus jobs. So I stopped, I didn't, but I always stayed active. And as an adult, I did martial arts for about 5 years. And then I stopped that. But yeah, with the roller derby thing, again, I've only been doing it. My first year was really learning it. They make you really learn how to be safe. You have to pass all these assessments before you can even do contact stuff. And then once I get into it, it's like the perfect combination of like that wrestling piece where you're an independent person, using your skill to succeed, but also you have a team and you have to learn how to work together. And that community of people, I would say the roller derby community I have is like second to my Milton Hershey family, like in closeness of the community. Yeah, like, and that's going through my whole life. The people that I've met, like Milton Hershey is number one. That's my OG family. Like those will always be my ties. But I've had some other groups of people and I thought we were close. And I know I'm only 2 years in, time will tell, but this group of women that I've met, and it's been such a good experience. And it's all, what it is? I kind of feel like we're a bunch of misfits. And that's what I feel like with the Milt when we get together, like we're a bunch of misfits, and that's how like with this, it's a bunch of just people who are trying to figure it out and,
Yep.
It's nice.
I got a couple quick questions for you, all right?
Yeah.
So one, which I don't even know if it still exists, but does the parent weekend shows, does that still happen? Do they still do that?
I think they do because I feel like I've seen a couple clips. But they might call it something different now.
Were they doing it when you were there?
Yes, they were. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I love them. Yeah.
So yeah, that was probably one of my favorite things because I had a lot to do. So did you have a crew while you're at the Milt? Like, did you have a group of people that you hung out with that, did you have a squad? If you did, who were they?
I did, and I still do. I'm so grateful that those are still my people. Taya Green, she came in elementary school. We were really close. When we were at the Milt, I would say the people I live with, Jessica Bruno, Crystal Salas, Kenya Reyes, Anjanette and Nettie Burns. And then we were all in a home together, and we were a really good clique. But then once, you got to school, it was different, like who you were in your grade with. I had friends in school, Tina, Carrie, Taya Green. Taya Green is very involved with the Alumni Association, and she's like our class rep, and I'm very close with her still. And then like the guys that I I don't know if it's just my personality, but I managed to just really, I felt like I was cool with everyone. Like when I look back, I don't remember too many people that I was like, I can't be around this person. Like I managed to just keep it kind of balanced because I was like an athlete, but I also was in the art club, and then I like ran the recycling crew, and then I was, like I did all these different little things, and I managed to just stay friends with everybody. So, Raphael Balthazar, like we've known each other since we were tiny. Yeah. So, I mean, it's like, he's still mad that I didn't invite him to my wedding, even though I'm divorced now. Like he gets mad.
Sorry, Raph.
Christian Branch, Butterball. I've known him since, he was tiny, and we've been close. So, I mean, I did have a crew when I was there. Emmy, Fumi, Candace, all my field hockey friends, the Kristen Rivera, Kristen Skull. So yeah, Kristen Dan Riper. I had a lot of friends.
I think you might have named your whole class.
I know.
Okay, and that's okay.
So how about?
I did. I just had a lot of friends there.
And that's cool. So did you have any friends, like, I know I had a couple guys that, like right around 9th grade, our freshman year, they got out of the Milt. And it broke my heart. And I still, like, to this day, I like always, because I feel like I lost out on a good friend because we didn't get to complete that journey together. Is there anybody that might have got out that you wish that would have stayed in the Milt?
Gosh, I mean, there are a couple that at the end of our, like, winding down our senior year, but I got to tell you that, like, okay, for example, a good friend of mine, her name is The Raven, she left right at the end there, and she is still so incredibly close to our class. She still comes to all our reunions when we do stuff, even though she left, because she felt like that was still the connection that she had created, and we're still all close. So, but in elementary, actually, I think she left in middle school, but I just found a letter the other day. So when I was at Hancock, one of my good friends, Priscilla Rivera, and she actually had older siblings. So I can't remember, Jonathan Rivera, maybe? I can't remember all their names, but Priscilla Rivera moved out of my student home, and I found a letter that she wrote me while she was at her other student home, complaining about some girl hitting on her boyfriend. And she writes in the letter, Robin, when you get to middle school, everything changes. She's like, because she was older than me, and she's like, you got to find yourself a good group of friends, because if not, people will try to stab you. Like, it's this letter from this like 12 or 13-year-old to like my 9-year-old self, because we were and she actually ended up leaving, I think, in middle school before high school, and I've reconnected with her a little bit afterwards, because she's on Facebook. So it's just crazy, because I have pictures of us, like, as little kids hanging out in the gym, and it's crazy. So yeah, I know that there are people who left, and I remember thinking at the time, we were so close to being done, and like just feeling like, man, like you gotta stay strong, like we're almost done,
Right. Yeah.
I got a question for you. So you said you went through a divorce. My question to you is, and you don't have to get too personal, but I know being married to a Milt, especially a Milt that's been a Milt for so long as you have been, you went there in first grade. A lot of people that didn't go to the Milt don't understand the Milt. And a lot of people almost feel in competition with the Milt and their spouse. So my question to you is, did that have any bearing on your relationship, your current relationship, or your past relationship, that you were a Milt and we kind of think a little different than the norm?
Yeah, I would definitely say so. It definitely wasn't like, if I had to list out the reasons, it wasn't like, and you don't understand the Milt. So like, I don't think like that wasn't a piece of it, but I definitely I compartmentalized my whole Milt and Hershey experience and kind of tucked it away while I was in this abusive relationship. Like because I felt like I couldn't really fully enjoy it. And there were 1 or 2 times where we went out to the Milt, whether it was for a homecoming, and it just always felt like I was trying to like explain things, or I was trying to like justify the level of love, like because in his mind, he's just like, I've never met any of these people. How could you actually care this much about them if you've never talked about them or like mentioned them? And I'm like, because there's just like too many to mention. Like you don't,
Yeah.
So there was a little bit of that piece. And then I've actually had people like kind of express some jealousy about it. Like, wow, like you just had such a great core group. Like I was telling someone the other day that I did that Zoom with people, and I'm like, I've known these people for almost 30 years. Like that's crazy, And they were just like, wow, I wish I had that level of connection with people. Like, I'm just like, yeah, it's just so different because we live together. Like we really are like siblings, But definitely, and I think one of those things too is like that adjustability piece, right? Like I don't know many Milts who have like settled. Like I'm just gonna stop here in my life. Like no more. I'm not gonna create a podcast and like like they keep going, right? Like you keep doing all these different things. And I've gotten into this with my therapy that it makes sense. Like it makes sense because of the way we were brought up. And it's not a negative thing, but like that bit of attachment, like we never really had that like cemented firm attachment of here's my core family that's going to last forever. Like our family was coming and going. Our people we were close to, brothers and sisters, came and went. And we were like, wow, that was important and meant something, but now it's over. So I got to keep going, Yeah. And I think that I have noticed that I feel that way in life sometimes, where I'll go through something and I'll notice that a friend has gone a different way than me. And I'm like, oh, that is not, okay, this was a good thing, but I'm going to move on from it now, and I think that, and that's not to speak for every Milt, because I know people get caught up in these stay places, but I definitely reached a point where I had like a little midlife crisis. I was 30 years old and I was like, I can't be in this spot. Like, this isn't who I am, and I can't stop growing and stop doing things. So, I need to make a change. And that's part of where, when I was talking earlier, like when you hit rock bottom, like I had nothing when I kind of made that decision. I had nothing. And then I just was like, oh, but I've been in worse situations, or people have gone through worse. Because I think that was another thing the Milt always was making me aware of, is how bad it could have been. And like, I don't like to use that. Everybody's in, what you're experiencing right now is valid. What you're struggling right now, it's real. It's a real struggle for you. But I would meet people that came into the school and they were like children who were here seeking asylum from war. And like, I just was thinking like I had friends, Tom Batongu and his brother, like they had come from an African country and like had experienced such a different level of living in the 5 or 6 years of their life when they came to Milt and Hershey, that like, I always look back on that and I'm just like, I think about that, those different groups of people who would come to the Milt and had just experienced crazy amounts of trauma or fear or, just displacement. And, I had it in my own way, just with my family in New Jersey, and it's just everybody's different experiences. Like, you just got to keep realizing you can just keep going forward and keep growing. And
right.
Absolutely.
Wow, that's awesome.
What was the question?
Robin, I got one last question for you before we close up here. And I wanted to ask, how do you feel the Milt has impacted you as a parent, or your parenting? Your relationship with children and just
I think, and this is probably, I feel like I listened to a couple of the episodes. I feel like this is a different answer. I feel like sometimes I'm a little lost as a parent because
that's okay too.
My parenting, how I was parented, was so different than the home experience I have now with my kids. So it's me, and I'm supposed to be the adult. And I'm like, sometimes I'm like, I don't know these answers. Like, I don't have a rule book. I don't have, the guide. I don't have like boundaries or limits like house parents had. So sometimes I think about my upbringing, and a lot of people learn to parent from their parents. So, and that can be good and that can be bad. Some people might do the complete opposite of how they were raised, but I just think about how I was parented and how Milt and Hershey parented me, and they, whatever they did right. Like, I feel like it made me a survivor, and it made me adjustable, and it was so important. But I get into these situations with my kids, and they're young, they're 10 and 7, and I'm just like, man, like, how do I address this? Like, because I didn't fully, like, I didn't really experience bullying in a way that, like, I would go to my house parents and say, oh, this person said this to me today at school. I don't remember experience in that. And I'm sure that there were some, but also it was just like group living. Like this is kind of how things rolled. So when my daughter will say something to me like, so-and-so said this and so-and-so said that, and I just kind of take a moment and I'm just like, I don't know if I ever experienced that. Like, how do I talk through this?
Address it. Yeah.
But I think what the Milt has taught me is to be resourceful and to just keep reaching out. So one thing, to go back to my daughter mentioning somebody was bullying her. She actually had called me from school and she said what had happened. And she was like, I really just don't want to go to after school program. Can you come pick me up? So I was getting ready to drive home. And in my mind, I was like, man, like, I just want to tell her that this doesn't matter. Like in the grand scheme of things, the way she was treated, like this isn't going to matter. Forget that person. But I was like, you know what, and I did some Googling and I found a podcast. And on my way home, I listened to this podcast about how to talk to your children about bullying. And it was completely different from what I would have said. And it was actually saying, like, do not minimize it for them because this is their life and it's the biggest thing happening in their life right now. And if you do that, they're going to not come to you with it. And I had to like completely shift my thinking. But I think that that's one thing that the Milt has taught me to do, be resourceful, but also when you take information and it's like, wow, this is different than the information I already had, it's okay to swap it out and learn new things and adjust your beliefs as long as it's like staying with your core values. But like, now I know this about this, so I'm going to change what I believe about that policy or parenting, whatever. So adapting. I think definitely with adapting and just like changing. So with the parenting part of it, sometimes you get into those situations where you're like, wow, I got to have this talk. I had the sex and puberty talk in a large group in the auditorium. It was not one-on-one. Like, I do not know how to do this, you know? So like for me, I'm just throwing books at her. I'm just like, here, read that. Like, read that. Like, I do not, but I feel like at least like she gets to be a little bit more resourceful on her own too. So with that, I was listening to the Bob Gert one though. And like one of you guys has like a chore chart and schedules. I have none of that. I am so bad. Like I know how to clean. I know how to clean. I know how to deep clean. I know how to do stuff. I also think that there was a psychological piece though from the Milt where I had so many limitations set on me that I kind of rebelled against it when I like got out. Like, oh, you tell me I have 7 stuffed animals and that's it on my bed? I'm gonna have 50 now in college. Like, like I feel like in some ways, I have art all over my walls. Like we were so limited, and it was even though it was a beautiful campus, it was stark in some ways, and they had to be because you have hundreds and now thousands of kids that are there. Like you'd have way too many things to dust. So for me, like I really live like kind of eccentric and that's, it's not, I know how to do those things. I know chore charts. I know how to do incentive programs, but I find I have a hard time setting those same boundaries with my kids that I grew up to.
Yeah.
But instead, I just kind of wave it around in their face all the time. I'm like, you don't even know. Like, I'm asking you to do one thing. I spent, 5 hours on I spent 5 hours on a Saturday cleaning the fire tower. You don't even know what I'm asking you to sweep up this thing. So, yeah.
Well, it's been great having you on. It's interesting when you're, I think the first person we didn't know, none of us knew.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
And Warner has been adamant the whole time that we've been doing this project that these are not interviews, but they're conversations. It's just a Milt talking to a Milt. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we're happy that you came on, and thank you very much.
Good job, Warner.
Very much.
Thanks.
Thank
This was fun. Thank
Is
you.
there anything you want to say to the people in closing? Anything that we didn't cover?
No, I love this. I had a great time listening to the couple podcasts you sent me. I think it's so neat to hear how different people's experiences were. I think it would be cool to hear some of the more recent experience because they have their transitional living stuff. They're like on their own.
We're working on it.
Cars and cell phones and like.
We got your girl Gina Alessi on it.
Gina. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, is she? Okay, awesome. Well, tell her I said hello. It's actually Mr. Alessi's birthday today. So happy birthday to Mr. Alessi.
Happy birthday,
Coach.
Happy birthday,
Coach.
Yeah. So no, I just, it's something that's important to me. I love talking about the Milt, and I know that there's different things that come up, and it's there's different stories that you hear where you kind of are like, oh man, that kind of puts changes the light that you see the Milt, but really like for the size of the school that it is and the work that it does in the community and with students. And it really just like, it takes kids and it just gives them the opportunity to become what they could have become in the right situation. And that's, you know, that's the way I've always seen it. So,
all right.
so thank you. This was a lot of fun. Jessica Warner, Jackie, and
Joey.